Hi everyone, and welcome to the Sports Countdown podcast with Declan Hughes and Peter Lynch. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to Freelance Football Ops, who source media football roles, and they can be found on LinkedIn and Twitter. So go check those guys out. It's the day after, Pete. The Euros is over. It's been a great tournament, a great month for us. Italy versus England final at Wembley. Italy win 3-2 on penalties. It's not coming home just yet. They'll have to wait another year and a half. So I think we are both on the happier side, but crazy night. We've got a lot to discuss. So we thought today we would just we'll go through each half and we'll kind of pick out some of the key moments in the game. So Pete, do you want to kind of hit us off with the first half?
Yeah, I mean, first up, I think Shaw shocked everybody in the entire stadium. I'm sure there was half a stadium who missed the goal. It was that early on. I think it was second minute or something like that. I think they just switched off completely. Di Lorenzo in right back, just ball watching, following the ball from Trippier's cross. Shaw came in. To be fair to him, I mean, I think we've touched on him before. How improved he has, how much he's improved in recent months. I mean, remember his time under Mourinho at Man United. Didn't get a look. I think he was made to train with the reserves and stuff like this. So that's a great story in itself because, I mean, it was some finish as well, to be fair to him, like coming onto the ball. Keeper had no chance. Obviously a dream start for England, and at that stage they really did think it was coming home.
I agree. It was a good start from them. I think we were all kind of surprised that I was that Trippier came in. Great ball in, and as you're saying, poor defending, at least switching off, not like them, but a great start for England, and I think we were all fearing the worst after that. But the thing is like it was a great start for England in the first half, and they had another almost identical chance again, or an identical ball where Kane dropped off really deep and then played it out wide again, and they didn't score from that. But I thought they were really threatening in the first 20, 30 minutes. They were the better team. But then I was slightly disappointed, I don't know about you, and the way they approached the game kind of from there on in. We'll get to the second half and stuff, but they really just sat off. I thought they were just playing for like a 1-0. They were just hoping that they could just see out, defend, and didn't really look to push on, because I think we can agree that England I think England's got more quality in that squad than Italy. Like attacking wise, again, they started negatively. So I think that kind of, I don't know, maybe that early goal kind of hampered them a little bit, because maybe they thought it was going to be a really tight game and they'd maybe sneak a goal later on in the game. But scoring so early, that probably changes your mindset, and your approach to that game. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. I'm absolutely what you said about how they approach the game. I've seen everybody commenting on it since, today and even last night about, how Harry Kane he's not been involved as much as he would have liked. And it's not just the final, like that happened the full way throughout the tournament. I know he started scoring a few goals later on, but I just don't think you can expect to win a final, especially against a team like Italy, playing that sort of style of football whenever you have Grealish, Sancho, Rashford sitting on your bench. To me, it doesn't make sense. I know Sterling's been playing well, and Mount obviously is in there, even Saka on the bench. So I just think when you have that talent, you need to use it, and you need to be confident enough to use it. Goodness me, nearly collapsing here, man.
Awesome.
So yeah, no, I just think that you have to just utilize what you've got there, because Italy are not blessed with pace, especially at the back. You talk about those two playing centre half, so I was a bit disappointed in that respect. But then, I know we'll get on to the second half, but a halftime whistle, I just feel, and I know this isn't the players' fault, and I don't like to single out people, but I'm sure you've seen Rio Ferdinand getting a few pelters on social media for his comments. Like, it was the same as, it's the arrogance from certain pundits, and I think that's why people don't like to see England win tournaments like this, because of what they say. You know it yourself what he said in before the Scotland game.
Yep.
So confident, and we know how that finished. And then at half time in that game last night, he was so confident. He said England were absolutely dominating the game, and it made me look into the stats at half time, because I didn't see it like that anyway. And that was their only shot on target. They had 38% possession. They had fewer shots in total. They had fewer crosses. So for me, that's just a bit frustrating. As I say, it's not the fault of the players. They were very professional and they kept going. But I just think you have to respect teams, especially like Italy. You know, the fact that they're on like maybe a 30+ unbeaten run, and the fact they're confident. You know, they're perhaps even more confident than England were. So
yeah, I mean, we we don't really know like Italian media or like any other really form of media if there is, it is arrogance, and it's not, as you're saying, it's not the players' fault, but it's just the punditry. It's just, you can't, and it comes back to bite them every single time. Like Ferdinand, I'm sure, like you're saying the game's over and stuff at halftime, and it wasn't. Like, just save that arrogance. If you win it, then you can be. You're like, well, you can't disagree with me. We've done it, but
exactly.
again, after they scored, they had a couple of good attacking moves, and then they just fell away. And the more the game went on, the more it was, if anybody was going to score, it would have been Italy. But then on your point about Kane as well, it's like when you play five at the back, and then also you've got Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice in there. So then you've only really got three forward thinking players. You've got Kane, Sterling, and Mount. So Kane dropping off that deep to pick up a ball, left them with Mount and Sterling going forward, and it's just, as you're saying, is that enough to like create a lot of chances? So I think Southgate got his tactics wrong. I think he's been hailed this tournament, and I don't really agree. I think they're really negative, and then to be fair, you get the final, so you've got to give plaudits at some point. But with that bench they've got, it should have been. I just don't think playing five at the back. If they played maybe like 4-3-3 or something, it might have been a little bit different. Give them more attacking flair on there. You know, another midfielder that's more positive. But no, it was after the goal, as we said, first half, you kind of saw it edging more towards Italy, and then getting into the second half, obviously Italy got the equaliser. You want to talk us through the goal?
They were definitely on top. Made a few changes, kind of fresh in the legs. Obviously, it's a long tournament, like, and you know they're playing a lot of games at a really high intensity, but they definitely deserved the goal. Like, it came from a corner. I think Pickford's a bit unlucky. You know, he made a big save there at that near post.
Yep, he did.
Yeah, and he's talked about him before. You know, I feel he was maybe due an error or two. You know what he's like. He's a bit of a hothead at times, but he kind of kept his composure, kept his cool. I know he had a few slip-ups in the Denmark game, but you know he definitely played well. One of the best players of the game, I thought.
Yep.
But yeah, big Bonucci was just delighted for him. Took it like a striker himself, and just found the back of the net. And that celebration, you know, was amazing in front of all those Italian fans. So, that brought them back into it. Yeah, and then, you know, following on from there was a bit nervy. Just wasn't sure what way it was going to go.
No, the goal. I think it was Verratti that had the header, like the smallest guy in the park. Get the header. It was, as you're saying, it was a great save. I think Pickford's really unlucky. That it hits the post and it bounces back in the way, and as you're saying, almost a striker's instinct from Bonucci, just taps it in. And then again from there on in, England kind of came out a little bit more because they had to, really, but it was still so negative, I thought. And like Sterling and Kane, like, do you see two guys flopping about on the floor as much as those two? It's bad. It's bad, isn't it? I think I was going to have a drink every time they fell, but I'd have been more drunk than I was last night. But it's just embarrassing sometimes. Like, and I know we meaning like UK, like, give the South American leagues and our teams all these like grief for like rolling about on the floor, but some of that stuff last night was bad. Like Kane, a big tall guy, just falling about. Like, some of the times it was no contact. Sterling again goes down in the box for a penalty. It was like, just stay on your feet, you know what I mean? Sterling's so direct and pacey. Like, I know, like, if someone touches him, then he probably will win a lot of penalties because he's just so direct and he's at his pace. But some of the times it's just stay up and you might be in for a chance. But yeah, it's just a bit crazy, isn't it?
For me, it's just frustrating that it could be a yellow card offence. Like, and you know, if you do that twice, you get booked, and that's you gone. And that's the way players are going to learn from that, because it is the worst thing in the world when you see that. And as you say, like other leagues get a lot of, abuse for it or whatever. Even El Clasico it's really difficult to watch these days because they spend more time on the deck than they do, playing football. But I know we're not singling out anyone. Immobile did it in the semi-final, I think it was.
Yep.
Kane's, there's a video of Kane doing the exact same thing, unfortunately. There was one for me where Harry Maguire went down holding his face in his own box, and they showed the replay, and I mean, your man's foot barely reached his waist and didn't even touch him, which for me, I mean, it's cheating at the end of the day, and it probably should be more severely looked at, but unfortunately it's not at the minute.
Yeah, I think if we take a break from like the game then, and we talk about a little bit about VAR then, like what's your thoughts on it being the tournament? I mean, it just doesn't make any, because we didn't get to talk about the semi-final games, so that again, not just because it's England, there's been like numerous times during this tournament where VAR should be intervening to say that the referees made a clear and obvious errors, the thing we keep hearing. And it doesn't do anything. Like, it's got to be, I don't know how more clear and obvious some of these errors need to be. It's like, it's mental. Like, what's the point in it then? It really doesn't make any sense to have it.
It's a strange one. It's annoying because I thought it worked well in the tournament so far, but I'm kind of maybe, guessing that going off what I've seen in the Premier League, because I know you're in America, so maybe you haven't seen what we see every week in the UK, but VAR is a complete shambles. Like, it's so bad, and so I was a bit worried. But it seems UEFA have a much better approach to things. But whenever it's just, they say it's a clear and obvious error, as you say, it's such a frustrating term to hear, because there have been a few dodgy decisions, like, and it's just, it begs the question, like, why is it in use? Because I know it's difficult to compare football to other sports, but I mean, you have it in tennis. Obviously, Wimbledon's on at the minute, and it works perfectly.
Yeah.
There's a lot in cricket as well, rugby even as well. So it's frustrating, obviously, with how big football is, and the world's watching, that it seems to be still not 100% correct at the minute. So yeah, it's quite annoying, especially whenever, I mean, think of how important these moments are. England got to the final. Penalty or not a penalty, but I'm sure there's plenty of other decisions that help other countries get to this stage, Italy and England, but other teams in the latter stages of the tournament. So
yeah, absolutely, it's frustrating, and hopefully, like, sometime soon we can get it where it works, because it can be a good concept, I think, if, as I said, if they get it correct. But right now there's just too many flaws in the system. But when we get back to the game then, extra time. My mind's a bit blank on extra time. I don't really remember too much happening. It was it just seemed like inevitably they just wanted it to go to penalties. I think for the neutral, you want penalties in a big shootout final. So really, really mundane kind of extra time period. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you can see which country I was supporting. So I was a bit nervous that England would take that easy, just because of their squad. When you have players like Sancho and Grealish to be able to bring on after 90 minutes of football and after a tournament, and to not bring them on at the start of extra time, for me, makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Because, we saw with Spain versus Italy in the semis, I think those two centre-backs, Chiellini and Bonucci, started to tire a bit. Spain brought on Morata, and he scored almost instantly. So whenever you have someone like Rashford with such pace like that, and Grealish, who is one of the best players in England by a clear mile. He's just so talented. He can take on players, and the two fullbacks for Italy were probably under the most pressure all night. Obviously, they were missing Spinazzola, and I'm not sure Di Lorenzo's kind of up to the task. And I just would have brought the likes of those young guys on much sooner. But so I did think England were going to take it at one point, but I mean, I think, as you say, both teams were just kind of maybe tired more than anything. And then whenever you bring on guys to hit penalties, we'll get onto that in a minute, but whenever you bring them on at the very last kick of the game, and expect them to come on and hit a penalty, I know they're professional footballers and they practice it every week, but it's still a big ask.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about that then at the death of the game. The Southgate's come out and put his hands up for it. But as you're saying, I completely agree with you. Bring on pace, especially in extra time where an aging Italian backline absolutely didn't do it. Then, as you're saying, brings on he brought Rashford on. He brought Sancho on really late. Saka came on earlier. So and to be fair, you could see when they brought Saka on, he actually made a little bit of an impact for England going forward because he's pacey and direct. So that happened before extra time. So I thought Southgate would have looked at that and said, well, I've got Rashford, Sancho, Grealish and stuff. I'll bring these guys on, like you're saying, in extra time and really go for it. I'm under there. I would have went for it more if I was them, just because, like, why not? They just gave the reasons why, you know, like if you lose a goal, you lose a goal. Like it's obviously, I'd rather lose in extra time, to be honest, than losing in penalties. So with that talent, they should have probably went for it a little bit more. But to make those subs so late and then for it to backfire, I think Southgate's got a lot to answer for, and I think maybe we'll be questioning whether he'll be the England manager coming into the World Cup. But we'll go on to the pens then, shall we? Who went first? Was it England?
No, it was Italy.
And they missed, didn't they? Did they miss?
Nah, Berardi scored the first one.
Did they score?
Berardi and Keane both scored, and then Belotti, who, to be fair to Southgate, you know, like Mancini, he brought on Belotti late on, I think, for his penalty, for his penalties, because he hits them for Torino and he scores them for fun. Same as Rashford, you know, you expect players like that to score. I think Maguire deserves a bit of a shout out for his pen.
Oh, great pen. To be fair to him, great penalty. Rashford hit the post. Sancho, keeper saved Donnarumma, who will obviously credit him. Then Jorginho goes up, and we know how Jorginho hits these penalties. He got them through to the final against Spain, but just a bit of, I don't know. Sometimes I think you deserve to miss it if you do something like that. Poor penalty. Pickford goes the right way, and then I don't want to be harsh on Saka. I kind of gave him a little bit of grief in a group chat that I'm on with an Arsenal fan yesterday, but the courage of a 19-year-old boy in a major tournament final penalty shootout, you need to score to stay in it. To have the balls to go up and do that. It deserves a lot of credit, when I think there was more experienced players that maybe shied away and didn't hit a penalty, and that boy took it on his shoulders and was brave enough to take it. And unfortunately for him, he's missed. But I think he deserves a lot of praise. And I think, in a serious note, the aftermath has been disgusting of the three England players that have missed a penalty, because these guys have been labelled heroes, or they would have been labelled heroes if they'd won that tournament, if they'd won the shootout, and to then twist it to the colour of their skin is appalling, and it's got no place in society or football or nothing. So I think that's got to be, we've got to talk about that a little bit, because it's some serious issue in all society, I think, and we need to try and stamp this out as quickly as we can. Yeah,
obviously it's unacceptable 100%, and the thing is, it's just a minority. You know, it's the same as other industries. It happens. It isn't everyone. So of course, it's not all England fans. It's not all football fans. So it's just a select few who feel that that's the best way to go about it, which clearly isn't. They need educated. You know, they need to be taught about what's wrong and what's right. But stuff like that, for me, it's pretty simple. At the end of the day, you don't do stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, and we talk, or we applaud, and we give a lot of plaudits to Marcus Rashford for everything that another young man, younger than us, for what he's done, for the poor in England during these times, during COVID. He is a national hero. Everybody, I felt really bad for him that he actually missed the penalty, because if anybody deserved to score or to not miss, it would have been Rashford. But yeah, I mean, we'll get back to it. The penalty, Saka misses. Donnarumma, what a goalie, Pete, right?
Yeah, no, but you touched on it before. I just feel that run up is I thought you might have a few things to say about it. You know, it's really not okay to do that. I know it sometimes works, but Jorginho did it. Rashford did it. Sancho did it. I'm sure Saka.
Yep.
You know, just put your foot through the ball, man. It's simple as that. Like, you know, I saw not sure the Switzerland. Remember the two centre backs? I think it was Schär and Akanji against France. Absolutely nailed their penalties.
Yep.
Next round, they changed it, and for some reason fancied that run up. Both missed. So I mean, I'm not sure that's the best way to go about it, but it's a happen. It's penalty shootout. It's a lottery. But you know, you mentioned Southgate. He took the responsibility. I think it's a really difficult one because Grealish has already come out and said, you know, he offered to take one. So you can't blame boys like that. But whenever you take off Henderson, who I know has got a penalty in him, other more senior players, like you said, you know, I've been in this situation before in a penalty shootout, you know, playing personally, obviously not the same stakes as Euro 2020, you know, you have as well. For me, it's confidence. A manager asks who wants to take a penalty, and it's five people who come forward and say, yeah, I want a penalty. But Southgate didn't go like that. He said, you know, they've practiced them in training, which I can see. I can see why he's done it. But again, a training ground penalty is miles away from a penalty at Wembley,
Yes.
in front of thousands of fans. So I think he got it
Um,
wrong.
yeah, like, and you're saying you take off. I don't know if Kyle Walker can take a penalty, right? But he's an experienced player. He's won Premier Leagues. He's been in Champions League finals. He's played at the highest level. I'd have thought a guy like him would have took it. I'd have thought Henderson, yeah. I mean, he come on as a sub anyway and get subbed off.
Yeah.
Liverpool captain, Premier League winners medal, Champions League winner. I'd have thought he'd have probably been one of the first guys to probably want to take a penalty, you know, take pressure off the younger players. So, yeah, decisions were made there, and it did go wrong for England there. And I agree that I think Southgate's got a lot to answer for all the good that he may have done. That I think he called that really, really badly. Before we end, we'll talk a little bit about the future then, Pete. I think we've had a lot this morning's been made of England, obviously a team for the future with the young players that they've got in there. So we'll look forward a little bit. What do you see for both teams going forward? And we'll look towards the World Cup in Qatar in 18 months' time. How do we see these two teams doing in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Italy, it's a bit of an aging team. You know, we talked about Bonucci and Chiellini, who I just have to say how unbelievable they were. I don't even think it needs to be said. You know, combined age of 70, those two, and they used all that experience for every minute. So it's hard to know if they'll still be around. I know it is next year, but it's you know, a year and a half away. You said 18 months, so it depends what happens between now and then. And I'm not exactly sure who they have, you know, coming through. And unfortunately, they'll never be as strong as those two together. You know, that partnership that they have. They do have, you know, a lot of talents. Chiesa is going to be an absolute star. He's so good to watch, so attacking, direct. You know, that second half was, you know, his completely there in the final.
Yep.
So he's one to watch out for. He'll be there. But it's, you know, it's hard to see. Obviously, Donnarumma. I think he's 22 years old, just one player of the tournament, so he will still undoubtedly be there, you know, in between the sticks for, I mean, maybe, you know, 10, 15 years to come.
Yeah.
Jorginho, again, he's getting on a bit, but, you know, absolutely outstanding player. So they have so much talent in there, but again, it's maybe the thought of a lack of goals that it came true in, you know, in the tournament. You know, Immobile he's getting on as well, as I say, Insigne. All these guys are maybe 30 plus at the minute, so still young, of course. But whenever you have guys like Mbappe coming past you, you know, and I know he didn't have the best tournament, but whenever you have really and Haaland as well, hopefully he'll be there. Players like that, so they'll still be there. But you know, there's obviously a lot of tough teams. England, I really do think they'll be there. I'm not sure you're convinced, but you know, whether it's under Southgate or not, I mean, how young those guys are: Saka, Sancho, Rashford, Grealish, Foden. He didn't have his best tournament, but they're all still going to learn, and that, you know, that loss, especially on penalties, you know, that'll teach them so much. They'll learn a lot from that game, from the whole tournament. So I think they'll be about, whether it's under Southgate or not. We talked about that before, whether he's in charge. I think they still will be, tough to play against. They've proved that they're tough at the back, but I think they need to be braver going forward with that talent that they have.
Yeah, I mean, we talk, you just named players that could be superstars, but if you don't play them, then they're no use. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they're not going to play, then they can be the best player in the world. But if for some reason you're too negative with the tactics, then they're just not going to get a chance. I mean, we talked at the start of the tournament about Southgate taking or wanting to take 5 right backs or something like that at the tournament. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of set the tone for how they were going to set up. They play Kyle Walker more as a right-sided centre back, which I'm not against, but yeah, I think you need to sacrifice one of those defenders and even one of the sitting midfielders and maybe go 4-3-3 and just have either Calvin Phillips or Declan Rice sitting, and then having more creative players playing ahead of them, and then another front three, and Kane as well. Obviously, don't play your striker as like a centre midfielder. Play him as a striker when you've got one of the best strikers in the world. I don't want him. Oh, fair play, the goal came from him, but I'm sure there's other players in the England team that could have done that, dropped a little bit deep and played that ball. You want him in the box. So, there's no doubting that England, I think England always seem to have a core of players that look really good. They're always going to be a team that's going to major finals and a team that should be where they were yesterday in the final or thereabouts, So whether they can get over the line or not will remain to be seen, but we'll soon see what happens, and we'll see what the future lies. Just a quick question, Pete. If Southgate was to go, would you have someone? I know we're not England fans, but who do you think would be the ideal man to take them forward?
Now you've put me under pressure. I mean, it's hard to know. They do need someone who can recognise, young talent, because the names on the squad is just ridiculous. Like Mount, Foden, Grealish, Bellingham, Sancho, Phillips. Absolutely insane talent. Look, Shaw, boys like that are still young. Like, you don't realise it, but they still are very young. A couple of young goalkeepers as well. So somebody who appreciates youth.
We were told Southgate was that, though. He's gave all these young guys their breakthrough, which is true. But then you get to that. I know it's a pressured situation, but you get there and you don't play them. So I just think someone that will just put complete faith in these young guys going forward, and they'll probably reap the benefits from it. So it needs to be someone, like you're saying, youth-minded.
Someone with a bit of experience as well. I think Southgate. I mean, who has he really managed before going to England?
Yeah,
obviously
absolutely.
He played the game, but that big game experience is kind of crucial in tournaments like that. I mean, you look at Mancini in the other dugout. Think of what he's won with so many different clubs in so many different countries. The trophies he has, and you look at that compared to Gareth Southgate. So it's completely different.
Night and day, and a handsome man as well, fully deserving. Right. We'll ask the viewers who they think should be the manager. They might come up with some interesting comments. But before we wrap it up, Pete, some worldies have went in this tournament. It's been it's been a really, really exciting tournament. I'm kind of glad. Sometimes tournament football can be a little bit, maybe more the World Cup's a little bit, like teams are a little bit tentative. They don't want to lose, you know what I mean, because it means so much. But I think teams kind of went for it this tournament. Some great games, a lot of goals. So we'll ask you for your top 3 goals in this tournament, if you'd like to give them to us.
As you say, some absolute, belters. I think my number 3 is going to be Paul Pogba against Switzerland. Obviously didn't turn out to be France's night that night, but you have to give, absolute wonder goal. He doesn't really score bad goals, to be fair, Pogba. That Benzema goal was pretty special, but I think Pogba is just such a clean strike. No keeper was saving it.
Yep.
Number 2, sadly for you, is
I know where this is going.
It doesn't look good for you from here on in, to be honest, mate, as a Scotland fan. Number 2, I've gone for Luka Modric. Outside of the boot, again, he's not a player who doesn't score many goals, but again, he's one. When he does, they're worth the wait. just bent that in against Scotland in the groups. Obviously not ideal for you, but an absolute peach of a goal.
Yep.
And sadly, number one. I think everybody knows where this is going. I don't really need to, say much about it. But Patrick Schick against Scotland again in the groups, first game of the tournament for both sides. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a better goal in the Euros for quite some time. He took one look up, ball came to him, didn't even take a touch, and per Davy Marshall was scrambling back over that line. So,
I mean, I wind up England, and then I'm sure there's a lot of moments that people can wind Scotland up, because we had. I mean, we got there, we talked about it, but some of the goals we lost were worldies. So,
as you said though before we came on, that England didn't score past Scotland.
There you go. The only team that they couldn't score against was Scotland, and Grant Hanley and co. Phenomenal defending, fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's been a great tournament. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Really enjoyed it. Now it's a bit sad that it's all over, but there's plenty of sport happening over the next coming weeks. So we'll definitely be there to talk about it. Plenty of episodes coming up.
Yeah, awesome. So we've got the Olympics coming up as well, so, and then football will be back before we know it at the end of the month. So 2 weeks and we're back at it again. But that's a wrap for the Euros. That'll be a wrap for us today, Pete. Thank you for coming on and giving us your thoughts. It was good talking to you again.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I'm absolutely over the moon that Italy actually did it, because I don't think we'd hear the end of it. But commiserations to all you England fans out there, and congratulations to Italy. And yeah, thanks everyone for all the support so far, for watching and listening. So just keep that up, keep liking, sharing, and we will be back soon as possible.